Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome.
There's a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
As long as the Matrix exists, the human race will never be free.
Start somewhere. It has to start sometime. What better place than here? What better time than now?
Terrorists! Terrorize this.
I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin. I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. I'm going to show them a world without you. A world without rules and controls, without borders or boundaries. A world where anything is possible. Where we go from there is a choice I leave to you.
And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse. And his name that sat on him was Death. And hell followed with him.
That's right, people. Greetings, free thinkers, revolutionary survivalists, and truth seekers. It is Monday, November 14th, 2011, and if you have found yourselves hanging by a thread of normalcy here on the front lines in this war on our humanity, I am your host, Darren Stone, broadcasting to you live from the mothership we affectionately call FEMA Region 1. Tonight's call-in number is 917-889-3064. Because, remember, kids, staring at the pretty auroras in South Florida as your power goes out and your car mysteriously stops is not the time to speak up. 917-889-3064. All right, well, hey, like I said, it's Monday, right? November 14th, we survived 11-11-11. 11-11-11. Yeah, the whole Masonic thing, 33, 11-11-11. Well, anyway, we survived. We're all here today. Or did we? Have things changed? Has there been a subtle shift? I don't know. I guess only time will tell, but I'll tell you what. Like every other day for the past 5 years, actually I'll say, let's narrow it down. Let's streamline it. For the past 2 years, there's so much stuff going on that I don't even know where to begin. But I will begin with 11-11-11. All right. No, I'm not going to go into any crazy Masonic stuff. I'm not going to go into any prophetic stuff. I'm not going to go into that. I'm going to talk about Veterans Day. It was Veterans Day on the 11th. And hold on a second there. I shuffled some papers and yeah. All right, and hit a wrong button. All right. So on Veterans Day, I have to tell you, I'd like to know where that holiday originated. I probably should have researched that before I jumped on the air tonight, but I'd like to know where that originated because what is it? I don't know. I guess at its core, I can break it down to it being a perpetuation of a lie. I wrote a little comment on the Front's Facebook page. By the way, if you are a fascist booker out there, please make your way over to the front on Facebook and hit the like button. And that would be pretty cool. I post a lot of interesting articles along with some listeners who post some nice articles, and we'll keep you up to date on everything fairly relevant, at least everything life-threatening. But I really didn't know what to say on Veterans Day, and I knew that if I had to spend any time online and on the radio show's Facebook page on Friday, I was going to be inundated with everybody, thanking veterans and praising veterans and all this other stuff, which I don't think is a bad thing. But my question is, and my question was on Friday, is what am I supposed to say thank you for? Honestly. I mean, if we're going to be honest here, what am I supposed to say thank you for? So I wrote this little thing. It's real short. And this is how I was feeling. And I'll elaborate a little bit after I get done reading it. I wrote, so it's Veterans Day. What to say? I don't think thank you is appropriate because I'm not sure what I'd be thanking a veteran for. I mean, I could take part in perpetuating the lie and say that thank you for your sacrifice for preserving my freedom. But that would be a lie because after all the wars that have been fought and all the people that have been murdered and continue to be murdered, both soldiers and civilians, the world is not a better place, and no person on this planet is more free than they have been. Both my grandparents were veterans, and they were the most important people in my life, so this is not about disrespect. It's about honesty. And if we were more honest with ourselves about war and the men who lead us to war, there would be no need for a Veterans Day. That's it. Short and sweet. And my whole thing is, when I look at a control mechanism, things like this are part of it. And you can agree, disagree, whatever. That's what we're all allowed to do, have our own opinions. By sitting there and everybody posting and everybody saying thank you and having, these ceremonies for veterans. Now, I'm not talking about sacrifice and disrespecting a person's individual sacrifice. I get all that. Okay? I am not anti-veteran. I'm not even anti-military if it could be used in a defensive way. I am definitely anti-military the way it's being used these days. But by everybody saying thank you to everybody, you have to ask yourself, what are you saying thank you for? Really, what are you saying thank you for? Because every veteran that you thanked, my grandparents as well, have not made the world a better place. It's a lie. It's a fabrication. They're not fighting for our freedom. They never have. Although they believe they have. I mean, that's the only way you could justify the horrors that you have to witness and take part in, I'm sure. I understand the whole psychological aspect of it. I shouldn't say that. I can imagine, okay? I can imagine that I understand the whole psychological aspect behind it. Look, when I see or when I listen to modern day soldiers that have been over in Iraq and Afghanistan and every other place that we're in, all the countries surrounding Iran. I understand. When they say they want to go back for more tours, okay, I don't hear many of them say, I'm going back to fight for my country, to fight for my freedom. I hear them saying, I have to get back to my boys. You see, that's the whole psychological aspect of this, in my opinion. They feel guilty. They feel guilty by not being there with people because they've been in this bonding experience and they've witnessed and been part of traumatic events together. And those are the only guys that they can relate with. So I understand that. But man, and women, the people on the other side of the battlefield, the people that are shooting at you and you're shooting at, they're in the same boat, except those people are actually they're fighting an occupying force. That's the honest truth. So I know that my opinion about Veterans Day is going to tick some people off, and I should stop talking and read some of these posts. You would learn something. Okay, Superior Productions, but unfortunately this is a radio show and it requires some audio. So I will continue talking. And I'm not sitting up here like I know everything. I'm just stating my opinion, okay? And if anybody out there says that my opinion is off base, if you're going to tell me that we're fighting for freedom in any country, then please feel free to call in 917-889-3064 and explain to me how we are fighting for freedom and how, if we are fighting for freedom, we're not getting our asses completely kicked. Because if you don't understand, if you don't realize that our freedoms are pretty much gone and we live in a fascist dictatorship at this point, then you can keep drinking that Kool-Aid and keep lying to yourself and be in denial all you want to. Anyway, we'll move on from that. I just had to get that off my chest. And I'm just going to address this person in my chat room one more time. So, if you feel like calling in and addressing the topic, again, feel free to call in and address the topic. All right, so let's move on. Let's move on to some. I have a whole bunch of stuff here. I have a lot of Earth and weather news. We have a big thing happening up on the sun. I have an excellent article. I have an excellent article that I found just before I went on the show about EMPs and survival. I told you all I read that book 1 second after. So we'll go over that. I didn't read the article yet, but I'm looking forward to checking it out. I have some health news, some synthetic vitamin E and why synthetic stuff is bad for you, and that's why you need to spend some decent money on your vitamins, whole vitamins. I have some Nazi Department of Agriculture news, and a good comparison for this is something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and I'd like to get into this at some point. I actually wanted to make a video on this comparison of America with a K today and Orwell's 1984. InfoWars beat me to it. I don't often read anything from InfoWars, but this article is from InfoWars. And then I have another one that I might get. So let's start out with the Earth and weather news. All right. So what do we have now. If you guys remember when I had my guest Kathy Beeran on, she was the woman who owned the fishing business down in the Gulf in the west coast of Florida. And she was on the front lines of the battle with BP, and the guy who was who's in charge of doling out compensation. Oh, that globalist lackey! What the heck was his name? Again, people, I'm still under the weather. My recall is shot, and also, very little sleep last night, about 3 hours. So, my recall is going to be crap tonight. All right. So let me see. I'm sorry. Just a little bit. Okay, here we go. So if you remember when I had my guest Kathy Beeran on, she reported, she told us all about the Corexit spraying, the militarized zone down there. And as far as I know, look, and I'll be honest, I haven't looked into this for a few months. I don't know if they're still spraying Corexit on a daily basis, a weekly basis. I really have no idea. But here's a brand new story coming out of the Gulf. And if you remember, back when we were really talking about the Gulf a lot, and that's another thing, we really shouldn't forget about it because the problem is still there. I'm with the school of belief, and I'll side with the people that agree that the seafloor is fractured and it is still leaking, and that's really the main reason why the Corexit spraying has taken place. But there was just a huge fish kill down in the Gulf. Over 4 million fish died. Neurotoxic shellfish poisoning threatening human health along Texas Gulf Coast prompted Texas Department of Health to issue a warning to stay away from the Gulf area from Brownsville through Galveston, where 4.2 million have been killed in an ongoing Great Gulf die-off, and to not eat the shellfish from there. A situation slightly relieved after a cold front Thursday blew toxins south, according to Texas Park and Wildlife. This is reported by the Examiner.com. Texas Department of State Health Services banned commercial and recreational harvesting of shellfish in the area of the 4.2 million fish die-off and warned the public to stay away from the Gulf area to avoid neurotoxin shellfish poisoning. Since then, updates are hard to find in other news sources. The latest mass fish die-off has been attributed to extreme heat causing extreme red tide in the area, plagued not only by big oil's crude and Corexit, but also by big agers, oxygen-depleting algae blooms, fed by fertilizer runoff from Midwestern farm fields that produce aquatic dead zones, water that cannot support sea life. Hey, look. Again, I haven't gone into any deep research of the fertilizer runoff by the Midwestern farm fields that's being accused of depleting the algae blooms, creating the algae blooms, depleting oxygen, and causing supposed fish kills. But I would guess that it has to do with federal mandates about what fertilizers can be used. And I'd like to know where these farms are. I'm sure they're not mom and pop farms. I'm sure they're probably government subsidized farms. I'm not sure. I'm just taking a stab at it. So it's just the way things normally work out. But like I said, I'm just taking a stab at that. I don't really know. But I just wanted to report to you that there is still problems going on in the Gulf. We really shouldn't forget that. There's actually a great Facebook page that you guys can like. It's called, it's called Gulf something. Just search Gulf Crusader, I think it is. Gulf Crusader. I'm going to address, I just need to address this guy in my chat room. He's confused about what this program is about. He doesn't understand it's about politics or environmentalism. It's about humanity, you simple-minded person. You need to have a wide range of knowledge and have an interest in all topics in order to get the entire spectrum. I don't need to bash politics all day. I cover topics of interest and topics that mean something and should matter to people. So I really don't know what you're doing here, so you're free to leave if you would like to. Or else I can help you do that. But I'm not that way. I'm not that way. Freedom of speech, brother, freedom of speech. All right. Moving from one oceanic area to another, we have El Hierro going off. El Hierro is going off the charts. Now, we've been tracking this for a long time since this started. Actually, I think it was over a year ago I had my guest, John DiNardo on. Remember that Planet X researcher I had on a couple times? And he was the guy that actually informed me about the whole Canary Island situation when he was on the program. And like I said, it was over a year ago. Didn't hear anything about Canary Islands since I spoke with him on the program. And then here we are over the last 3 months. We have the Canary Islands becoming a fairly interesting topic. We all know the reasons why we track this activity. End results could be pretty bad. But I guess that as of today, the Canary Islands were shaken by a 4.7 quake. And the story kind of goes like this. Magna plume activity, eruptions in Canary Islands and Azores shaken by a 4.7 magnitude quake. An underwater volcano near El Hierro in the Canary Islands has begun erupting near the shore, reports Reuters. The eruptions may be spectacular, but officials have also noticed that the volcano is spewing toxic gases into the air around the island. After a worker studying the volcano became ill, several of the island's beaches were closed. In the video, a local explained that the volcano is also making the island's cats act strangely and eat dead fish. You know, animal behavior before a let's say extreme weather event is something to watch for. So if your cats are acting weird and eating dead fish and they don't normally do that, well, it may have something to do with the sulfur being released, or the seismic activity, or the volcanic activity. I don't know. I'm not there. The volcano, which is just over 200 feet from the surface, began erupting a week ago. The Daily Mail reports the eruption began with a 4.3 magnitude earthquake. According to the International Business Times, the volcano is shooting magma 65 feet in the air. The eruption is the first in the Canaries since 1971, and locals are already speculating that it may create a new island. Despite the beach closures and dead fish near the island's human population is safe. The Telegraph reports that Spanish authorities insist there is no major risk for the population. Well, they've been evacuating people. Evacuating people on a weekly or daily basis over there. So, I wouldn't really roll with the whole the human population is safe. In addition, a 4.7 magnitude quake was reported at the Azores hotspot west of the Canary Islands. The depth of the Azores earthquake was 10 kilometers. The Azores hotspot is a volcanic hotspot located at the Azores in the northern Atlantic Ocean. It has interactions in the mid-Atlantic ridge, which lies just west of the hotspot. Now, for those of you that are too ignorant to understand why we track the Canary Islands, you might want to do a little looking into it and realize that if we do have a massive eruption in the Canaries, part of the shelf will slip into the Atlantic Sea, causing a 300-foot tsunami moving at the speed of sound, which will inundate the entire east coast of North and South America. So it really, begs to be watched, especially if you live on the East Coast and you don't want to get hit by a tsunami moving at the speed of sound. It'll take about 8 hours to get here. But like I said, most people that listen to this program are well informed enough to understand why we track the Canary Islands. All right. And let's stay on the earthquake theme. And like I said, people, 3 hours sleep last night. I'm kind of shot. So I have a lot of quick little stories here for you, and then I really want to get into this EMP thing. Kind of interested in that. We have now I reported what, a week and a half ago, Oklahoma. If you guys follow the Front's page and the Front's website, frontradio.net, you've seen us keeping track of the seismic activity all over the country. Oklahoma has ramped up pretty big, and it continues to shake. And I came across this article kind of combining a bunch of things that have taken place in this area. And I haven't read this article yet, so, hey, we're going to read it together as a family, okay? So, seismic waves shaking up Oklahoma, Georgia, Tennessee, and Texas. Sonic boom, birds and bugs flee. Yep, that's the headline. seismic waves shaking up Oklahoma, Georgia, and Tennessee, and Texas. Sonic boom, birds and bugs flee. It seems that this past year has been filled with all types of strange weather patterns all across the nation, between droughts, flooding, tornadoes, and rare earthquakes, many located in regions not known for seismic activity for 50 to 150 years. I can attest to that, being here in FEMA Region 1. Already, in the past couple months, we have had a hurricane, an earthquake, 3 F3 tornadoes, and, of course, the deadly Halloween blizzard that we are just recovering from. So, yes, I see those comments in the chat room about the new hires for 8 NBC. Holy crap. Yeah, I need to cover that. I need to cover Jenna Bush and Chelsea Clinton being hired as reporters for NBC. Are you kidding me? Honestly, are you kidding me? Really? But anyways, I can attest to strange weather anomalies in areas that didn't usually get those. Seismic waves are waves of energy that travel through the earth and a result of an earthquake, explosion, or a volcano that imparts low-frequency acoustic energy. Many other natural and anthropogenic sources create low amplitude waves, commonly referred to as ambient vibrations. Seismic waves are studied by seismologists and geophysicists. Seismic wave fields are measured by a seismograph, geophone, hydrophone, which is in water, by the way, or an accelerometer. The propagation velocity of the waves depends on density and elasticity of the medium. Velocity tends to increase with depth and ranges from approximately 2 to 8 kilometers in the Earth's crust up to 13 kilometers in the deep mantle. Earthquakes create various types of waves with different velocities. When reaching seismic observatories, their different travel time enables a scientist to locate the epicenter. In geophysics, the refraction or reflection of seismic waves is used for research on Earth's interior and artificial vibrations to investigate subsurface structures. There are 2 types of seismic waves, body waves and surface waves. And if you guys remember, supposedly the 5.3 Virginia quake only had one of these signature waves. And that's why the whole thing was I don't know what the word was, questioned, I guess, questioned. So I can't remember which seismic wave the Virginia quake did not have, which signature wave. I can't remember if the surface wave or the body wave. I don't remember. Other modes of wave propagation exist than those. Other modes of wave propagation exist than those described in this article, but they are comparatively minor importance for the earth-borne waves, although they are more important in the case of astroseismology, especially helioseismology. All right, so there's that one. That article was not what I thought it was going to be. Had no P wave. Okay, there you go. All right, now here's something a little interesting. Massive networks of stripes appear in Chinese desert. I'll be throwing this story up on the Front's Facebook page, which, of course, transfers over to frontradio.net. You can see the picture of these things. They are visible from space, right? So here it goes. Just a short little article. Talk about your I didn't read it either. I didn't read it yet. Talk about your morning weird. Some people studying Google Earth for some reason managed to run across some very weird patterns in the Chinese desert that have a bunch of folks stumped. The pattern looks like stripes that were etched or dug over the top of the landscape in the area. Some of the lines appear to be made from a silver/white material. Considering these can clearly be seen from orbit, the formations are raising some eyebrows with geeks trying to figure out what exactly they are for. Are they some sort of alignment or targeting grids for space weapons or what? In one of the photos, you can clearly see a grid of structures with 3 of them either destroyed or partially standing as if they were there for target practice. The strangest one is the intersecting grid lines. The structures cover 18 miles of space. The other pattern that looks like some sort of targeting grid is set up with concentric rings of what appear to be structures with straight spokes radiating out from the center. There's an aircraft placed in the center of this circle. I have no idea what it is, but it reminds me of how the military would test the blast radius of some sort of bomb to see what the damage is like further out from the point of impact. What do you think? Is this a military testing ground or the Chinese equivalent to crop circles? I don't know, but if you look at these pictures, you guys, you'll see they're pretty funky. And you know, when anything is visible from space like that, you know, I always have to me, it doesn't seem like it's done by accident. But, you know, hey, like the NASA rocket scientist that I interviewed told me, there really is no credible source of information anywhere. So really all we're left with, people, is speculation. And those that actually think they know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, don't really know and don't really get it. That's why I leave everything up in the air, right? All right. Now, let's get into some more serious stuff here, right? You know, we follow the sun pretty heavy on this program. There is a filament that has appeared on the surface of the sun, and from what I've read, from what I've seen, it appears to be something of a magnitude not seen before. Now, what kind of brought my attention to this? It's not. There's a filament flapping around on the sun. Okay, that happens. That's not a big deal. It's just that the size of this filament, and now it is on the Earth side portion of the sun. If you all remember, we had auroras a couple weeks ago that reached as far south as Arkansas and Alabama. And from what I've read, which we can all take with a grain of salt, from what I've read, those auroras were caused by something called a halo CME, which was caused by a filament similar to the one that has appeared now. Now, the reason this one is a little bit of concern is because, like I said, the size is something not seen before. Okay, as we're entering into this solar maximum, which I believe peaks at the end of 2012 into 2013. In the beginning stages, if this is what we're seeing, then you know, you might want to think back to the warnings from NASA, NOAA, and the National Academy of Science regarding solar storms and grid issues, if not complete grid failure, which is why I'm going to go into this EMP stuff after this. What happens is these filaments, they're like these long whipping plasma whips coming off the surface of the sun. They become very unstable most of the time, and they collapse back into the sun, sending out massive amounts of energy in whichever direction that it's facing. If you check out the Front's website, frontradio.net, you hit the live Earth and Sky tools, and you go down to the CME tracker, you will see a massive, massive CME that the sun blew out. I believe it was today. Not Earth-facing, thank goodness. But it pretty much enveloped Venus and Mercury, which is, you know, luckily it wasn't headed our way. But regardless, it has the potential to put something like that our way. So this article goes on to say, Solar forums all over the world are buzzing with sun astronomers proclaiming this to be the biggest prominence that many of them have ever witnessed, he said. Remarkably, though, this is not the biggest thing. A dark filament of magnetism is winding halfway around the entire sun. From end to end, it stretches for more than 1 million kilometers, or about 3 times the distance between Earth and the moon. If the filament becomes unstable, as solar filaments are prone to do, it could collapse and hit the stellar surface below, triggering a hydra flare. I've also heard them referred to as halo flares, which is why I referred to it as that, but we'll call it a hydra flare for the sake of this article. No one can say if the eruption of such sprawling structure would be Earth-directed. Quote, I can't help but wonder what could possibly come next, since we are still over a year away from the forecasted solar maximum, adds Ramsden. There's never been a better time to own a solar telescope, or some storable food. So, as far as I know, when we had those auroras that reached far south, like I said, down to Alabama and Arkansas, that was caused from a C-class halo or hydra flare, okay? A C-class halo or hydra flare. This sized filament has the potential to generate an X-class. So with the classes going C as being the minor, M, medium, and X, kiss your ass goodbye, then that's the reason of concern for this thing. Because if a C-class hydra flare sent auroras and electromagnetic storms as far south as Alabama and Arkansas, how intense or how powerful could an X-class hydra flare be? And what effect would that have? You can deny it all you want, but we're on a little rock flying around a massive ball of plasma. Huge. Anything can happen. And the thing that gets me is this. You get people and you get NASA and they're like, oh, hey, nothing, everybody, when you look at the comments in these articles, it's like, oh, hey, the sun's been doing this for 1 million years. What's the big deal? No big deal. Oh, who cares? Look, if they knew everything about the sun and its potential, they wouldn't be spending billions, if not trillions of dollars with all their fancy new satellites to circle the thing, to find out everything they could know, right? Because if they already knew everything they could know about it, they wouldn't bother studying it anymore, right? So, they always speak out of both sides of their mouth. Now, the danger of a huge geomagnetic storm is, of course, power failure, grid failure, which is the warnings that NASA and NOAA has given us. Not that I trust a lot of what those organizations say. And not even to say that if, let's say, we had a report of a massive incoming X9 class solar flare that had the potential to be devastating to parts of the grid, would we even know if the grid went out if that's what happened? No, I don't think we would. The powers that be, alphabet agencies, are notorious for not giving critical information when critical information should be given to the public, because they always want to maintain control over and above everything else. And what the effects of that might be are an EMP-like effect, which would destroy pretty much all electronics, or so I thought. So, found this article just before I went on the air. Seems kind of interesting. And it's titled, What Items Might Survive an EMP? And I don't know. So we're going to read the article and check it out. Because in the book, 1 second after, which has to do with an EMP attack over the United States, these were nuclear warheads launched from barges, one in the Gulf, one on the West Coast, one on the East Coast. I believe, if I can remember correctly, 25 miles up into the atmosphere would cause the proper effect to knock out the grid with an electromagnetic pulse. If that happened, excuse me, I like that one, Jules in chat. Please tell you 72 Chevy would make it. I hope so. In the book, hey, anything pre-80s, all vehicles pre-1980s had a chance of still running after the EMP attack. But the problem is that it's not, mobility isn't the issue. But you know what? Let's read the article and then we'll go into some other effects if the article doesn't cover it. So let's just check it out. Identifying the systems that would probably fail if there were strong enough EMP from either a massive solar CME, a nuclear EMP weapon, or a tactical EMP bomb is easier to speculate than items that might survive an EMP. There are obvious items that would survive, but many are not that obvious. All right. Okay. An EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, is a side effect of a nuclear explosion or a coronal mass ejection, such as what this filament that I just spoke of could generate. Or a proposed EMP bomb. An EMP is a near instantaneous and invisible zap of the electricity that surges through electrical wires and electrical semiconductor components. If the EMP is strong enough and the electronic components are close enough to the source, then these components could fry. Once they are fried, that's it, they're done. Only physical replacements will bring the systems back up and running. So, while attempting to discover what items will survive an EMP, we need to know what is inside the item. Namely, if there are any electronic semiconductors, transistors, IC chips, microprocessors, etc., it is the microscopic semiconductor junctions themselves that are vulnerable to melting due to an excess of electrical current being forced through the junction from the electromagnetic pulse. Also, an EMP will be carried through the overhead power lines at the speed of light and could instantaneously overwhelm power transformers along the grid with excess electrical current, causing the windings of the transformers to melt into a molten blob. And that's been, that's actually been brought up in Congress a number of times. Why hasn't our government, with all the money they like to throw around on frivolous things, such as fake wars on fake terrorists, and things like carbon taxation to curb man-made global warming, another complete and utter farce. If they have money to throw at these things, why not just bring in a whole lot of extra transformers that they can throw up in case of an EMP type effect? Or why aren't they grounding these transformers? Seems fairly inexpensive in comparison to the money we spend on other things. Things like things like shrimp on treadmills, which was something that our tax dollars paid for. Shrimp on treadmills. Seeing how shrimps perform on treadmills was a government test that we paid for. Also, the dating habits of Taiwanese man boys, where they threw $1 million taxpayer dollars at that little experiment. So, you figure if they have money to throw around for things like that, then they might want to just ground the transformers so that if an EMP-like effect happened, we wouldn't have as much of an issue. But they don't do that. Where are we here? Okay. Here's another thing to know. An EMP's energy will decay the further away from the source that you get. Electronic circuits that are farther away will be less vulnerable to the EMP. And the question is how far away. And I guess that's going to depend on the overall strength of the EMP, the altitude of the EMP, and the line of sight distance from the EMP, and any protection that the device might have to protect it from an EMP. After all that, the simple answer to what items might survive are those items that do not contain semiconductors. I'm bad with electronics, everybody. I am bad with electronics. Electronics I get confused with electronics as far as wattage and voltage and what can do what, and for whatever reason, I just haven't got there yet. But anyway, so in my survival crew, I need somebody that's good with electronics. So if you have electrical experience and you can rig some things up, I might give you some food. The problem is nearly all devices today contain semiconductors. If the device you are wondering about contains any digital interface whatsoever, then you can probably kiss it goodbye. Often it may be difficult to even know if there are semiconductors in a device. Even if there is no digital interface, there could still very well be semiconductors or electronic circuits somewhere inside. Since winter is coming, let's talk about heaters. Since, hey, look, when you break it down, the things that are going to keep, the things that are going to keep you alive, or the things that can kill you fastest, are temperature control or lack of control, leading to hypo or hyperthermia, and dehydration. Those are the two things that'll kill you the fastest. So we have to address those first in any type of survival scenario or situation. So because up here in the Northeast, FEMA Region 1, and because predictions for this winter are more extreme than last winter, just find yourself a woolly bear caterpillar. You'll see it's all black, and there you have your scientific data to tell you that we're in for a harsh winter. Electric heaters, obviously, forget about it. Would never work after an EMP or electromagnetic pulse effect. Oil heat, nope, because the burners, igniter, transformers, electrical control circuits, and electronic controlled pumps will fry. Plus, with no electrical power, the pumps won't function. That's my issue with my well, since I'm not on, I guess people in town, sewer, and water have that issue too, unless it was gravity fed. Natural gas heat. The utility gas pressure will probably remain for a while, but electronic thermostats or gas valve controllers may fry. Some basic style natural gas heaters, such as wall units, could be lit manually, though, until the pressure runs out. Portable heaters. Most self-fueled portable heaters without electronic controls will survive until your fuel source runs out. If it plugs in, it's toast. So what's the only alternative? Wood stoves, right. Wood stoves are the winner. In any type of survival situation for maintaining heat in a cold climate, it is your wood stove that will keep you alive. So, I have a friend who just spent thousands of dollars putting in a pellet stove in his basement, and bought $2,000. He spent $2,000 on all of these pellets that he has stacked up in his basement, and excuse me, and. I asked him, I said, well, this is great. I said, why did you do this? Why did you buy this pellet stove? And he said, because in case I don't have to spend so much money on oil. This kind of saves me money on oil. And I said, but you're still spending money on pellets, and the price of pellets, they gouge those also. And I said, and does this thing work if the power goes out? And he's like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, I said, I hate to say it, but why do you just invest in a wood stove, a big wood stove? That way you don't have to deal with any of that, And yes, it needs electric to blow the heat also. That's a comment from chat. Yep. Now, as far as cars go, as most of us know, any new car today is jam-packed full of electronics. And that's another bad thing about the cars today. You can't work on your own car any longer. Actually, the state of Massachusetts. I don't know if they have done this yet or they want to make it illegal for you to work on your own car. They want to tell you where to bring your car to have it worked on. Because it's all for your safety, everybody. It has to be special state certified mechanics that are able to deal with these, intricate electronic systems in the cars. Any car made with electronic ignition and fuel injection will probably stop it in its tracks. cars have been being built with these features longer than you may think. Depending on the exact vehicle, you may be somewhat safe. With a car built in the early 1980s or 70s or earlier, it would take some significant research to list the vehicles built without these electronic systems, but suffice it to say that most any vehicle today is vulnerable to EMP failure. So, Jules in chat, it looks like you're 72. Might be all right. And then generally speaking, as far as an EMP attack goes, ranging from tools to appliances to heaters to vehicles, if it has electronic circuits, it's vulnerable to EMP. There's basically these hand tools, hand-operated or primitive appliances, wood stove, heat, and old vehicles. We're talking living like in the 1800s or earlier, which is why the Carrington event, which was the last huge geomagnetic storm the Earth was subjected to, wasn't such a big deal because everybody wasn't dependent on their electronics like we are now. While the threat of an EMP to the degree of mass outages is apparently slim, the fact is that it is not zero. A huge portion of the world population today relies on electricity for survival. It has enabled great advancements in civilization. The lack thereof could enable great setbacks to civilization. Now, that's my whole point, and I bring this up a lot. It seems as though we've been set up. Honestly, the majority of the population had never even really talked about coronal mass ejections, complete grid failure, EMP attacks, until the past couple years. Honestly, a lot more people have become aware of these threats. Now, I would say that the powers that be were well aware of these threats. So why have we built a society so fragile and so dependent on these? And not just a society as far as infrastructure and electronics and tools and machines go, but people themselves. Everybody, if something like this was to occur, everybody who's dependent on medications will most likely die, because those medications, the way they get to you is by shipping, right? So if you can't go to your local pharmacy and get your medications, you're probably going to die. In the book 1 Second After, 80% of the population in America died due to starvation, lack of medicine, and disease that broke out due to unsanitary conditions. Of course, I said this before. The book didn't address the catastrophic, 100 plus nuclear plants across the United States that would go into a Fukushima type meltdown. That didn't address that, and that's a whole different story. I guess we could just pretend that doesn't exist, kind of like the mainstream media does. But that's not going to do anybody any good. And I'm not sure if paying attention to it's going to do anybody any good either, to be honest with you. But that's just one thing that was not addressed in the book. But you have to understand, it's not all about, your electronics and your cars. It's about your health and the things that you're dependent on to feel good, be healthy, and stay alive. So what I did personally was I had bad vision. All right, I was dependent on contact lenses or glasses. If without those, I couldn't see 10 feet in front of my face. So I figured in a shit hit the fan scenario, if I'm in a survival type situation for an extended period of time, and my vision is a key component to my survival. So I didn't want to chance it. I spent the money and got corrective surgery on my eyes, which is some of the best money that I ever spent. I'm not on any medications. I don't need any medications to keep me alive. If I did, I would be doing my best to get off of those, and maybe if that included changing my lifestyle so I wasn't so dependent on something like that, I would start that journey so I wasn't dependent on something like that. So just food for thought, things to think about. That's all. All right, what do we have next? I know I'm choppy tonight. Like I said, it's a rough one. I've been on a tear of strange shows, I guess. But here's a disturbing story. This will accentuate the freedom that all the veterans fought and died for. This will make their sacrifice well worth it, right? Citizens forced to pour bleach on perfectly good food. From armed police raiding organic food co-ops to the Department of Agriculture confiscating raw milk in Minnesota, we've already seen some pretty heavy-handed policing tactics being applied to the local and organic food movements. But while the safety of raw milk may still be at least a somewhat debatable issue, I personally don't think it is. I know people that have drank raw milk for most of their life, and they are just absolutely fine. In fact, usually better than fine. The idea that government officials can force private citizens to pour bleach on perfectly good food is disturbing, to say the least. But that's what apparently happened at Quail Hollow Farm in Nevada, where a farm-to-table dinner was interrupted by officials from the Southern Nevada Health District. And after the Southern Nevada Health District got done with the people at this farm-to-table dinner, and they made them destroy the food, they said they wouldn't even allow them to feed the food to their pigs. So, as many of the folks in the video below argue, which I'll be posting this video, there's something very strange about a system that allows junk food to be marketed to children, and where obesity, heart disease, and diet-related cancers are running rampant, and yet small-scale producers are not able to serve food to their immediate customers without a complex set of regulations that were designed more for the industrial food system than a local informal economy. Of course, the video below shows only one side of the story. The Las Vegas Sun reports on the Quail Hollow Farm raid and explains that among the inspectors' complaints were that, quote, prepared food packages had no labels. Some of the meat was not USDA certified. Side note, the USDA that likes to irradiate your produce when it comes into the country, and then stamp it organic. Right. Same USDA. Oh, by the way, the same USDA who allows Monsanto to sit on the USDA board of organics. Right. Oh, on that, and while I'm still on a roll about the USDA, the same USDA that is trying to claim rights to the word organic. They say they own that word. That USDA. So, when these people speak, at least know who's speaking to you. So the USDA, I'm sorry. So the complaint was that some of the meat was not USDA certified, as if that holds any credibility. Some food was prepared in advance, off-site, not up to proper temperature. Vegetables were declared unfit, and there were no receipts for the food. How do you have a receipt if you grow the food? Whether or not the answer was to pour bleach on all the food, of course, will depend on where you stand on the old spectrum between common sense and law and order at all costs. Interestingly, while many online commenters are busy decrying this admittedly depressing spectacle as a sign of a new world order and big government fascism, Susan LeBay of the Southern Nevada Health District, talking to the Las Vegas Sun, seemed to agree that there is a need for more flexible legislation when it comes to farm-to-table events and other small-scale food gatherings. Strangely enough, LeBay acknowledged that farm-to-table meals will often be safer than a store-bought one because fewer hands touching the food usually makes for a safer meal. And she said she's sympathetic to the idea of legislation that would help farmers host these events, while still complying with the law. The problem is that the regulations were written for the era of industrial food production and often don't allow for freshly butchered meat, raw milk, and homemade items like pickles. Until the law has changed, LeBay said, we don't have an option, quote unquote. Until the law has changed, she said, we still have to act like Nazis. Much like rolling stops for cyclists, there's a strong case for creating rules, regulations, and systems for enforcing them that are specifically designed for small-scale producers and farm-to-table dinners. The one-size-fits-all mentality can only favor the big guys and will leave all of us with a less healthy, less productive food system as a result. I mean, the proof is in the pudding, everybody. The proof is in the pudding. Literally in the mother effing pudding. Okay? Because we have never been more sick, more unhealthy, and more deconditioned than we are now as a society. So obviously the USDA-controlled food chain is really not doing anybody any favors. Oh, that's right, except for Big Pharma and the medical cartel, doing them a whole lot of favors. And then, of course, we have the whole trickle-down effect with food stamps and J.P. Morgan, the banking system, and, of course, mixed in with all this is the United States government. So, you see how it all goes together in one happy cluster F of poison and control for the masses? Yeah. Yep. But don't worry, go to your doctor and he'll just tell you it's genetics. It's your gene pool. Was your father overweight? Was your mother overweight? Oh, well, that's why. All right. What do we have now? What do we have? All right, I want to do this one. I want to do this Orwell article here to sum it up. Like I said, out of InfoWars, let's see what they have to say. The title of the article is Americans Are Now Living in a Society That Rivals Orwell's 1984. I've said this on the show. If you go watch the movie 1984, barring the black and white, not the black and white, the very drab clothing that everybody has to wear, barring the burned-out-looking civilization, the polluted civilization, and I'm sure it looks like that in some places. It definitely looks like that in a lot of areas around here after all the devastation. Barring those obvious things, when you watch that movie, we are pretty much right there. Right there in 1984. Now, I don't think Orwell took a good guess, just like Aldous Huxley. I don't think he took a good guess with Brave New World. I think it was some insider info, or maybe commissioned to write a story that would get some, elitist globalist rocks off while he read it before he went to bed every night. I don't know, but I doubt it was just a good guess. So here we go. Americans are now living in a society that in some cases is more draconian, more invasive, and more Orwellian than the dystopian tyranny fictionalized in Orwell's chilling classic 1984. On almost every front, American citizens are under an equal or greater threat of abuse, control, and more pervasive and high-tech surveillance than anything Winston Smith ever faced. I mean, people, they are making streetlights that listen to you. Listen to you, your streetlights. What do they think? Al-Qaeda is going to be walking down Main Street, USA, and they have to pick? Come on. Wake up. Compare life in Oceania, which is the place, the country in 1984, to life in 2011 America, with quotes from George Orwell's 1984 appearing in italics. It says, in general, you could not assume that you were much safer in the country than in London. There were no telescreens, of course, but there was always the danger of concealed microphones by which your voice might be picked up and recognized. That's from 1984. But that's true today, right? I mean, if you're down in Washington, D.C., that place is mic'd to the hilt. They're listening to every word that's being uttered on the streets there. And I'm sure it's in other cities too. New York. I don't know about everywhere in New York, but I'm sure in certain districts. I would imagine since, that, I'll refrain from using profanity. Where Rahm Emanuel resides now, it's in Chicago, perfect place for a gangster. I'm sure it's the same there. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not positive, but it would only make sense, right? Yeah, we're being listened to all the time. So Americans will now, too, have their every utterance listened to by Big Brother in public through surveillance-capable streetlights now being installed in major cities across the country, which can record private conversations. Just as the citizens of Oceania could never be sure of their privacy, Charlotte's Deputy Homeland Security Chief told the local Fox network earlier this week that Americans, quote, would never know whether or not the government was listening. You see, and that's the whole thing. It's the whole fear mechanism. That's in my opinion, that's the overtone for most of it. Right down to taxation and the fear of the IRS. It's the fear that's generated, to make you unsure and make you comply and submit just in case they're listening to you. And when you lose the freedom to say what you want to, or when you lose the ability to speak freely, and by saying, what you want to, I don't mean acting like you have Tourette's and walking out in public and, belting out profanities. No, what I mean is when you are prohibited from gathering with a small group in a public place and discussing politics or political issues or the direction of the country or the president with fear of being detained or arrested under the guise of terrorism, where you can now be detained forever. That changes us as people, whether you want to admit that or whether you realize it or not. It has to change us as people. It has to change our thinking process, the way we act. And that's why I always say this is a war on our humanity. It is dehumanizing us. Anyways, back to the article. Quote, this is from the book 1984. In the far distance, a helicopter skimmed down between the roofs, hovered for an instant like a blue bottle, and then darted away again with curving flight. It was the police patrol snooping into people's windows. I believe a blue bottle is a dragonfly, but I'm not sure. America in 2011 is more advanced than Orwell's Oceania in that it doesn't have to rely on expensive helicopters to spy on citizens. That job has now been entrusted to unmanned drones that not only act as surveillance devices, they can also carry tasers that deliver incapacitating electric shocks to quote-unquote suspected criminals. Comment in chat, did you know that it's Cancer Awareness Month? Well, damn it, I'm glad, because I don't think anybody was aware of cancer. So good thing. Everybody throwing a pink ribbon or pink cleats if you play in the NFL. Anyway. Quote, this is from 1984. It was terribly dangerous to let your thoughts wander when you were in any public place or within range of a telescreen. The smallest thing you could give away, a nervous tic, an unconscious look of anxiety, a habit of muttering to yourself, anything that carried with it the suggestion of abnormality, of having something to hide. In any case, to wear an improper expression on your face, to look incredulous when a victory was announced, for example, was itself a punishable offense. There was even a word for it in newspeak. It was called face crime. So, is face crime a conspiracy theory? Nope. Face crime is now a reality in 2011 with the aid of behaviorometrics. That's right, behaviorometrics, a new omnipresent surveillance technology developed for the U.S. Air Force and destined to be used in law enforcement to, quote, monitor suspicious behavior. The system revolves around a camera that tracks facial movements biometrically in order to build a psychological profile of the individual under surveillance. The movements of your muscles in your face will alert Big Brother through the process of behavior analysis to your presence as a suspicious individual who may be engaging in the act of a thought crime or, God forbid, planning a public protest. Yes, that is true. Comment in chat. The thought police the airport. We've reported on that. TSA agents, actually, I believe they called them behavioral police or something, didn't they? I don't think it was actual, they didn't use the word thought police, but the behavior, what were they called? Behaviors, I can't remember it. But, so, when I covered that story about the behavior police at the airports, what is your recourse if you're accused of a crime of this type of, I'm not even going to use the word crime. If you're accused of this, what is your legal recourse? What is your defense? Is there any possible defense? It would go something like this. Mr. Stone, come with us, please. Why? What did I do? We suspect you of a thought crime. No, I didn't. I wasn't thinking of anything like that. Yes, you were. No, I wasn't. Yes, you were. Story over. Wow. What are they going to say? What are they going to do? Oh, no, I wasn't thinking that, man. Oh, okay, you weren't? Well, it just kind of looked like you were, based on our extensive technological behavior analysis grid. Our bad, Mr. Stone. No problem. No, I don't think it'll go like that. Quote from the book, 1984, quote, "It was almost normal for people over 30 to be frightened of their own children, and with good reason. For hardly a week passed in which the Times did not carry a paragraph describing how some eavesdropping little sneak, child hero was the phrase generally used, had overheard some compromising remark and denounced its parents to the thought police. As part of Homeland Security," this is from the article now, "as part of Homeland Security's See Something, Say Something program, Americans are being bombarded at every level, from Walmart to football games to hotel rooms, with messages encouraging them to report their fellow citizens for engaging in, quote, suspicious activity, which, as we have documented, includes mundane behaviors such as paying with cash, opposing surveillance, using a video camera, talking to police officers, talking to police officers is now a suspicious activity, as well as paying with cash, as well as opposing surveillance, and using a video camera. Oh, wearing hoodies, that's on the list. That's suspicious behavior. Driving vans. All you soccer moms out there with your minivans, they're watching you. That's right, baby. Watching you. With your minivan and your cash and your video camera that you're going to use to videotape your kid playing soccer. And by God, don't you wear a hoodie to that game if it's cold. Oh, here's some more suspicious activity. Writing on a piece of paper and using a cell phone recording application. Writing on a piece of paper is a suspicious activity. If I have to write something down, what am I supposed to do? I don't know. Don't know. Back to the article. Schools are also now training children to be quote unquote eco spies by reporting on their parents' bad recycling habits, encouraging kids to re-educate them into compliance. Quote, this is from the book 1984, inside the flat, a fruity voice was reading out a list of figures which had something to do with the production of a pig iron. The voice came from an oblong metal plaque like a dulled mirror which formed part of the surface on the right-hand wall. Winston turned a switch and the voice sank somewhat, though the words were still distinguishable. The instrument, the telescreen it was called, could be dimmed, but there was no way of shutting it off completely. And back to the article. Just as the citizens of Oceania were constantly bombarded with propaganda from the state via telescreens, Americans are now being subjected to the same onslaught in the form of spurious, quote, alerts from the federal government that are delivered through numerous platforms, including LED screens on the IntelliStreet's lighting network, televisions at Walmart stores that play Janet Napolitano's See Something, Say Something diatribe, FEMA's emergency alert system that can hijack all conventional broadcast communications, and mandatory, well, actually, remains to be seen, right? and mandatory government messages that will appear on all new cell phones from the end of next year. And if that isn't enough, the Washington Post today called for the Internet to also be brought under the auspices of government takeover switch, whereas Winston simply only had to put up with Big Brother lecturing him via telescreens. Americans will be peppered with propaganda from every conceivable direction because it's brainwashing, people. It's brainwashing. That's why it's brainwashing. That's how you brainwash people. But Americans love it because we suffer from Stockholm Syndrome. Here's from the book, 1984. In the vast majority of cases, there was no trial, no report of the arrest. People simply disappeared, always during the night. Your name was removed from the registers. Every record of everything you had ever done was wiped out. Your one-time existence was denied and then forgotten. You were abolished, annihilated. Vaporized was the usual word. Now, you want to talk about NSA fusion centers? You know, those big black money pits that have no oversight, where they compile everything about you, every stroke of a key on your keyboard, every purchase you make, every dollar you spend, everything you say in your cell phone, every picture you take in your cell phone. Do you know that when you take a picture with your cell phone, that picture has GPS technology in the picture itself so that they can tell exactly with latitude and longitude where that picture was photographed? Why do you think they're doing this? To save you from Al-Qaeda? It's so that when you need to be vaporized, you will be disappeared and gone. And you see, if you're not pulled out away from everybody in public in the light of day, if you just quote unquote disappear in the night, well then again, it's all left to speculation. And the people will mutter amongst themselves. The people will mutter amongst themselves, geez, what happened to Joe? What happened to Mary? Geez, I don't know. Did anybody talk to the authorities? I don't know. Yeah, they said they don't know anything. Well, that's odd. Well, you know, I know Joe went to that Occupy Wall Street thing in New York a while ago. So, back to the article. American citizens are not merely disappearing without a trial, as happened to those who had committed thought crime in 1984. They are being directly assassinated via predator drone strikes with no oversight, no legal process whatsoever. Okay, that's embellishing a little bit, but it is nevertheless true. Okay? As the case of U.S. citizen Anwar al-Awlaki shows, Americans are now at risk of falling victim to a program of state-sponsored assassination should they be designated, quote-unquote, terrorists. In Orwell's 1984, miscreants were tortured and brainwashed, but they were not murdered on a whim by government decree before at least being given the opportunity to recant. See, they would try to, quote-unquote, re-educate you first. Re-educate you. Oh, boy. Back to the book 1984. Don't you see that the whole aim of newspeak is to narrow the range of thought? In the end, we shall make thought crime literally impossible because there will be no words in which to express it. Every concept that can be ever be needed will be expressed by exactly one word, with its meaning rigidly defined and all its subsidiary meanings rubbed out and forgotten. You see, and you may think that I'm going out on a limb here, but with social networking and texting and chatting through those mediums, the language is getting destroyed. And as the language breaks down, the meaning of the words disappear. and the ability to understand words and to formulate phrases using words that contain more than 3 syllables is becoming increasingly more difficult for most people, especially younger people. Have you seen the spelling? I mean, the word what will be W-U-T. So back to the article. Illiteracy rates in many large states are rising. 1 in 7 Americans cannot read anything more challenging than a children's picture book. Americans are being dumbed down by an onslaught of fluoride in the water, cultural decay that celebrates stupidity over intelligence, and a public school system in terminal decline. Attention spans are shortening as Americans are fed a constant diet of mind-numbing entertainment. But vocabularies are shrinking as many Americans can barely express themselves, whereas in 1984, higher-level thinking was destroyed directly by the state. In 2011, America, the entertainment industry, is doing just as good a job, if not better. And this is true. To think about things like I think about things, or like some of you guys out there that listen to the program think about things. Creative, critical thinking. If you go stand in a bunch of people, if you're out somewhere and you talk like that, or you bring up subjects that require some in-depth thought or some conversation, does it go anywhere? Usually not. You're looked at like you're a weirdo. Okay, it reminds me of the movie Idiocracy, where a guy of average intelligence wakes up in the future, and everybody's so dumbed down that he's absolutely brilliant, but he's also a complete outcast because and the authorities consider him dangerous because he can think, he can speak. See, people think the system wants to stop things that are like immoral, like porn. Okay? They don't want to stop porn. Are you kidding me? They love people to be inundated and immersed in pornography. Not to say that I don't do that myself sometimes, but I'm just saying, you got to know about the forest if you want to go survive in the forest, is what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? All right. Back to the book. Oh, sorry. Back to 1984. In Oceania, at the present day, science, in the old sense, has almost ceased to exist. In Newspeak, there is no word for science. The empirical method of thought, on which all the scientific achievements of the past were founded, is opposed to the most fundamental principles of INGSOC. I don't know what that is. And even technological progress only happens when its products can in some way be used for the diminution of human liberty. Oh, it's a drug. Okay. So the article says, technology is being used to crush human liberty and eviscerate our privacy. Every technological advancement from Facebook to the iPhone, I have both, brings with it a further assault on privacy. The U.S. judicial system is identifying ways to legalize constant surveillance over every American, most recently with the effort to give authorities the power to secretly track Americans through clandestine global positioning systems attached to their vehicles. And see people, that is why I made my Veterans Day comment. Because to thank them for serving their country is to perpetuate the lie that there is a country and that they are serving it with good intention. It's not to speak out against those individuals at all. It's to speak out against the lie. And I don't want any of those people to be dying overseas for nothing, and I don't want anybody to be killed overseas for nothing. That's why I make statements like that. But anyways, that's the end of the program, everybody. Take these words of wisdom to heart. If you haven't done so already, you've been listening to it for almost 2 years. See you all on Thursday. Check out this great new show on Orion Talk Radio tonight at 10 p.m. called What the F with my good buddy Jules. Good night, everybody.
Your choice is simple. Join us and live in peace, or pursue your present course and face obliteration. We shall be waiting for your answer. The decision rests with you.